gave you your handout begins with the chakras and what is a chakra. And you also just got a diagram of my incredible artwork for the chakra. So when we talk about the chakras, there's the language that we use here in the classroom as students, and then there's the language that we will use with clients, because there's a lot of technical jargon that we're not going to use in a session, because we don't want to use metaphysical ease with our clients. Otherwise, that would be like going to an attorney, and there's a bunch of legalese and contractual stuff that we as normal people have no idea what that is. So when we're talking with clients, we want to speak in a way so they truly understand what we're talking about. Now, the definition of the chakra in the classroom is a vibrating resonance chamber, and that is a test question. Vibrating resonance chamber. And first of all, we use the word vibrating because within ourselves we carry a vibration, a frequency. Now, resonance is important because you'll see in time that each one of the chakras corresponds to a note on the scale. And when you study tuning forks, those will be brought into play. So when we're talking about sound, the word resonance is very important because that means it's in tune. Now, if any of you have played music or know music, you understand that when you hit certain notes together, it doesn't sound good, and that's called dissonance. So resonance is the opposite of dissonance. We want resonance, dissonance we don't want. And when we get out of tune, when the auric body gets knocked around, we experience traumas or events where the chakras just get blocked, then the chakras become dissonant. Then we don't feel right, or we're out of tune. And everybody has moments or days where they say that they just feel off. And you could ask 3 times, is something wrong? Is something wrong? No, we just feel off. And so we're just off key at that time, which is restored. Now, the last word, chamber, means that it's a container, all right? It's basically a sound chamber, so it's a vibrating resonance chamber. Now, with your clients, you simply define the word chakra from Sanskrit language as wheel. That's how it translates directly. But when I do a little 3-dimensional demonstration, we'll take it to a different level. The chakras, if you could see them, and at some point some of you either do or will, they are cone-like devices that float right on the body. And when you see a drawing in the way that I drew this, it looks like it would be, solid, like a cup or like a paper cup. However, what you want to remember about your aura and your chakras is that they are plasmic. They have a feel to them, a texture. Plasma is considered one of the forms. There's gas, liquid, solid, and plasma is considered now one of those forms of matter. So if you could touch the chakra, it wouldn't feel, like this. It would feel electromagnetically charged. It would feel somewhat airy, but you can also feel the energy that it gives off. Now, in the drawing, and also this particular glass, do you see the grid work on there? This is really key because the cone part of the chakra is the supporting part that supports the wheel itself that floats in here. But the grid work is likened to the lint trap on a dryer, and that it collects the impurities that come into the auric body. And that way, those impurities are not bombarding the chakra itself. And along with the cone, there is a bit of a dome or a membrane that is over top of the chakra. And that way it's not getting attacked directly. Now, when we are hit with a lot of negative energy, that at that point, that membrane can erode. And in the energy work that we do, that has to be restored. So the chakras operate on, and I'm going to off of electromagnetic attraction and repulsion. It's a lot of language. All right, so they are electromagnetic devices. Now, when the chakras are open and moving, and you put the pendulum into the chakra, it should go clockwise. That means the energy is imploding and exploding. The chakra is basically breathing. Energy is going in, energy is coming out. That's what we want. And so when we talk about electromagnetic attraction and repulsion, we as people, we can be energetically attractive or repulsive. Not how we look, it's an energetic output. So last week in the prayer lesson, we talk about the aura and auras overlapping. That's part of what makes us feel like when we encounter someone that the energy is compatible or incompatible. If the chakras are not working right, the energy pushes it away, it repulses. And then at that point, we attract what we don't want. When the chakras are open, moving in a clockwise fashion, the chakras are drawing energy in. And that's when we are the most attractive, when all the chakras are open and moving. Okay? Now, what causes the chakras to block? All right?
Trauma.
Trauma, yes, which is extreme. But first and foremost, your chakras are your thought containers. You know the saying, thoughts are things? Well, those things are in your chakras. And the two things that block the chakras are negative thoughts, and those negative thoughts could be yours, or they can be projected into you from the outside. So thoughts affect the movement of the chakras. Now, when we talk about things affecting us from the outside, it's easy to go into what other people do or other people project on us in a harmful or a malicious way. It's much more simpler than that. Parental upbringing can cause conditioning that goes against our truth. So just because a person is born into a family, into a mother and father, and we choose our parents before we're born, it doesn't mean that they're born into the truth or core belief systems of those two parents. So when, as children grow up, they start to develop their own philosophies. Even when a family, maybe they are devoted churchgoers, it may not work for them. So what's in the chakras, grossly affect the individual. Now, the other thing that blocks the chakras is fear. Fear is extremely destructive. We are made out of love. We are born out of love. Fear is the antithesis of love. So when we were talking about truth or not your truth, so we have, love, truth, fear, untruth. So when fear goes into the chakra, that is just like pouring acid into the chakra. It's very erosive and it's very corrosive. Fortunately, even if a chakra gets very destroyed, we still have the ability with this kind of work to go in and rebuild it and put it back. But we do need to be careful with fear and the damage that it does. Okay? All right. All right. So if you look at your diagram that you have of the chakra, there are some items in here that I do want to talk about, and it's part of the blockages. So when I drew this little blob, and there could be a lot of those, that's negative gunk that gets in there. That's ectoplasm, which is very sticky, and I drew it as black to make it seem like it's a little bit more negative. And the more these things form, the more they slow down the movement of the chakra. So the chakra, the wheel itself is supposed to go clockwise, but the cone rotates against the wheel and it goes counterclockwise. So it's basically like gears working with each other. One going this way, one going the other way. So when this gets too gunked up with this ectoplasm, which is negative thoughts or fear, it slows it down. It slows down the mechanism and doesn't allow the wheel itself to spin as fast as it should, okay? Now, what else comes into play? Well, chords. There's all kinds of chords, and a lot of times in the metaphysical community, when the word chord comes up, there's immediately a negative connotation to that. Well, let's talk about the positive chords first. When you're in a relationship with someone, and it's a good relationship, and it could be just a friend, it could be boss, co-worker, of course, lover. There are chords that form, there are positive exchanges of consciousness between two or more individuals. And the chords that you have with your parents, because that is unconditional love, are these beautiful wisps and lines of light that you can see in someone's aura. And they're very thin. And those lines of light like that are chords to anyone that you've had that was ever your parent in a past life, okay? Those are not cuttable. Those would be like trying to take scissors and cut a flashlight beam of light. They're not cuttable. You don't want to cut them. They're simply an indicator of connections that you have to people where they've been your parents. Now, when you have a cord that goes to someone that you're in, let's say, a good romantic relationship with, then that cord is very light-like, but it has substance to it. And just as people break up at times, or someone passes away, those cords will disengage. And though in that case, they disengage properly. And it's like a little hose that comes off and goes off to that person. Now, negative cords are like tendrils. When these cords get in the chakras, these are where two or more people have a negative relationship with each other, and they are a negative exchange of consciousness between two or more people that infiltrates the aura and becomes a form of a blockage. In other words, when you see the cord, this kind of cord, going down into the chakra wheel itself, it's basically like a straw that is siphoning off or siphoning out all the positive energy. And in that case, we need to cut those cords. Those cords need to be extricated properly by the facilitator, or if a person is conscious enough and they can do enough forgiveness work and release, an individual can release a cord on their own. But because of the power of the exchange and the memory on it, most people don't release them. But cords have a tendency to infiltrate and keep two people that don't belong together connected to each other. Now, one party can actually act more maliciously and sort of possess the other party. In other words, they don't want to pull away. they keep manipulating and keep trying to controlling. Even when we cut cords in this kind of work, we have to remind the client that after the cord is cut to not engage that individual anymore. Because here's the funny thing. When you cut these cords, they have a bungee effect to them. So once it's released out of the person where the cord is cut, they will snap back to the person on the other end, and it creates an awareness, and it causes the person on the other end to almost immediately reach out, call, text. They have an awareness that something just happened with that person. So the instruction that we give to the client is to not engage that individual in any way, shape, or form. Now, have people allowed cords to reattach? Yes, they have. The other part about cord cutting on this primary level is this. You have to ask permission to cut a cord. Right? You can't interfere with the other person's karma. So a person could have a lousy situation where they are broken up and there's no reason to carry on, but if this person says, I don't want the cord cut, you have to back off. You can't manipulate the situation. They have to learn that lesson. I had a situation a chunk of years ago where a woman was quite taken with a certain celebrity and really thought, she knew him, and she really thought that they were going to end up together. And I said, we need to cut this cord. Nope, not going to do it. So because I knew who she was talking about, a couple weeks later, I'm watching the news and it's announced that this individual is now engaged to Miss Whoever. It's like a couple days later, she called me on the phone. I want to come back in. You can cut the cord now. So, but that's an example of permission to cut. You don't, when you get into sacred geometry, we will talk about karma to the nth degree, right?
What would happen if you did cut that without getting permission?
You are interfering with their own course of action, their karma.
Oh, okay.
Maybe it is for them to learn hard lessons in relationships or anything like that.
But
Right.
you as a teacher, would something come back to you, or are you just basically messing with someone's life?
You're interfering
Okay, gotcha.
with their course. You can't interfere with their free will and choice. You can recommend,
But
okay?
that's it.
Right, but they have to say yes. But it's like this. A doctor can recommend to a patient that they take certain action, but they can't arbitrarily put them under and do cosmetic surgery.
Yeah.
You can't do that. You can't mess with free will and choice. All right? Cords. Every once in a while, what happens is cords don't come out properly. And this happens more often than not. So how does this happen? Well, maybe two people break up in a very sudden way, or someone does die, all right? It can cause the cord to snap, leaving a piece of the cord still inside one of the individuals. Or I have actually seen where other facilitators did sloppy work in cord cutting. When you're cutting cords, it's like when dentists have to remove wisdom teeth. You have to be very efficient. You have to really go down in there and get it all. Otherwise, a piece of it can remain. So this piece that's left inside, we call a barb, and it looks like a little bit of an arrowhead. And it is a broken piece of cord that's remaining inside. And over time, because the barb isn't just in the chakra, it's in the physical body too, the person can experience physical discomfort in their body. And in all my years of doing this, more often than not, they have physical discomfort from what that is. So we have to go in the same way of cutting the cord, which is a process called beaming and drawing, with your crystal wand, your obsidian collector, and going in gently and pushing that through the chakra, through the body, through the meridian, and out the back chakra. It's done in a very methodical way, and you can feel it come out, and they can feel it come out when you're working on them. Does anyone have me do a, you did? Do you want to share that at all, Bryce?
It's like an emotional release, for sure. There's been times where that happens and then tears just start coming out of my eyes, and it's like, it's crazy, the feeling that happens.
And the funny thing is, when she said emotional release, because 90% of the chords that are found are in the second chakra, which we'll talk about tonight. Okay, that's the one that gets the most notoriety. All right. This mark, this is called a blackout. That's a trauma mark. And when you see the chakra and it looks like it's been blacked out like that, that's memory loss. So a trauma mark is an event in time where something happened where their subconscious mind buried that information so they don't remember it. Now, when you work on chakras, you do not reactivate a trauma mark. You can discuss it with them and say, oh, between 5 and 7 years old, you don't remember much, do you? And they go, no, that was like first, second grade. No, it's a blur. Leave it alone. Because if you open Pandora's box and that comes up, you can't go into one day and reactivate that. That whole time frame of 2-3 years is going to open up, and they will remember things that their subconscious buried for them on purpose. So we're very careful with trauma marks. The chakra itself grows in time. So the point of the chakra, which is the part that rests very close to the body, that's birth. And as we go up the chakra, we go through the aging process, and the ring around the chakra is the present. The dotted lines that you see right there, that's called the unformed future. The potential of it is there, the energy is there, but that has not been lived or experienced yet. And those lines change slightly every day, because every day you're in the present, you're not in tomorrow. So that continues to grow. And also, what's really important about the chakras is that the more a chakra is used and activated because of how we live our life, the chakra will get bigger. Now, when we prioritize and deprioritize certain aspects of life, it shows up when you're working on someone, because some chakras will be bigger than others, depending on how we use those areas of life. And in today's modern world, we do prioritize and deprioritize certain areas of life. So when we go back several thousand years ago and we talked about chakra balancing, that was simply how to reprioritize and balance everything that we did in life. Now, over the next few weeks, the next few lessons, you're going to learn in depth about what each one of the chakras represent in our reality. But thousands of years ago, when you go from the root chakra to the crown chakra, people took time out every day to dedicate events, thoughts, actions to nurture those chakras. You know, survival, relationship, sustenance, love, communication, idealism, connection to God. That's how simple life was. Nowadays, we've gotten very fancy when it comes to the chakras and what they represent. And you'll see, especially in this lesson, how some chakras are definitely over-prioritized. So when you over-prioritize the chakra, the chances are very likely that those over-prioritized ones are the ones that get blocked more, because there's too much energy put on them, too much emphasis is put on them, okay? All right, so the chakras are connected to the physical body via the endocrine system. And there is a handout in here that we're not going to, you'll get this, but we're not going to talk about that part tonight. We're going to keep this simple. So as you move from the basic 7 chakras, from the root to the crown, each one of those chakras relates to one of the glands, one of the main glands in the body. So your chakras, in a manner of speaking, are electromagnetic glands, okay? Now, when the chakras are not energized correctly, they're not sending enough electromagnetic energy into that particular gland, and that gland begins to suffer and doesn't put out the way it should, and thus that creates hormonal imbalances, okay? So your chakras, when they're not working right, they directly affect your physical body through that particular gland first, and then so on into that area of the body where that chakra is. All right, so we discovered years ago that there is a chakra system at the feet, all right? It's not considered one of the primary 7 chakras, and you'll see that there are many more chakras than what you realize. So the chakra that sits at the feet is really an overlap of energy between the 2 mini chakras that are in your insteps. So, and in sacred geometry, you will study this to a very high degree. And that piece of information of overlapping energies creating a 3rd vibration is called a Vesica Pisces. Just remember that for like in 2021 when you do sacred geometry. So there is not just one chakra like in the rest of the body. So where the feet are, there are many chakras on the insteps, but because they do radiate out, they give off an amount of energy like this and like that, creating a new vibration in between. And that is the chakra that we read when we're doing the pendulum at the feet. So it's 2 little chakras creating a vibration. Now, those chakras, if they are not working correctly with each other, they're going to create one stronger, one weaker, and a pull to one side or the other. So the chakra at your feet is about being grounded in the present versus the past or the future. So in your body, this is something to remember from now and as long as you study the body and energy. The right side of the body is the male, the outgoing, and it represents work and responsibility, and it's the future. The left side of the body is the female, the yin, the incoming. It represents emotion and relationship, and it's the past. So when we put the pendulum at the feet, down between the feet, sometimes the pendulum, instead of going clockwise or counterclockwise, will pull one way or the other, meaning the person isn't grounded in the present. They could be too much in the past or too much in the future, or just completely blocked altogether, okay? The foot chakra also establishes, our ability to set boundaries, or do we let people step on our toes all the time? And that's really important. The foot chakra is also our connection into the earth. So years ago, in studying this, Merlin told me the way you think of your feet and that chakra is to imagine your toes like tree roots going down deep into the earth. And he said your feet are the center of your body, not in your trunk system. He said there is a mirror of you on the earth, and as you grow up, you grow down. And the more you envision your toes going into the earth, the more you root and center yourself. So keep that in mind. And one of the things about working with the foot chakra, especially if a person is very ungrounded, go outside in your bare feet and dig your feet into the dirt. The energy of earth will help ground you and center you. All right?
There's actually a lot of discussion that I've seen lately that like rubber-soled shoes are one of the greatest problems in modern humanity, because we've insulated ourselves against our connection with the planet. And it's like that has so many different emotional, energetic, spiritual, physical repercussions that we didn't really know about until recently. But we're now starting to see, years and years of this type of insulation against our connection.
Well, anything that would be considered to be man-made versus natural it will create a certain amount of insulation or isolation. But that's why the healing part of that is go, take your shoes and socks off and get your feet into the dirt, literally, and connect with the earth, because it will balance you. Now, when we work with the feet, there's something to know that's important, because we normally, when we work on people, we work from the feet up when we're going to clear the chakras, and we check with the pendulum from the feet up, moving up the body until we get to the crown. However, there is a rule that changes this. If a female client comes in during the day or after work and she's wearing high heels, the lift from high-heeled shoes puts a pinch or displacement at the instep where the mini chakra is, which means that when she gets on the table, even taking her shoes off and she's in her bare feet on the table, it takes some time for the foot chakra to settle back into a normal position. So if you read with the pendulum immediately, and a female client like that, then it's going to resonate as blocked in some way, shape, or form. So what you do is start at the root chakra with the pendulum, get those readings and go to the crown, and once she's been on the table long enough, literally off her feet, so the foot relaxes back into its normal position. Then you can do the pendulum again. So it's important to keep that in mind, okay? So, when the pendulum goes into the feet and the pendulum is sweeping up toward the head, that means the person is not grounded right. They're not on the earth correctly. And that's something you take note of immediately. If the pendulum is spiking down into the earth, that's an individual who is too grounded. And that is resistance to change. When the foot chakra, it seems like it's anchoring into the earth, the analogy I use, it's like a person that is anticipating an earthquake that never comes. They're just bracing themselves, but it just doesn't happen. It's fear of change, the saying, waiting for the other shoe to drop. So that has to be worked with too, because there's such a thing as being ungrounded, there's such a thing as being too grounded and hanging on too much. We want the normal clockwise spin of the feet to demonstrate being grounded in the present and also going with the flow of things. All right? All right, let's take a quick break. Okay, the root chakra, or the traditional first chakra, is the color red, and it rules the adrenals. So when the root chakra is not working correctly, it doesn't feed the adrenals, causing the adrenals to drain, causing the individual to be extremely tired. The root chakra in the physical body does not stand out away from the body. The root chakra is singular. It doesn't have a duality. So there's the legs, all right, and the root chakra goes down about mid-thigh like that. So the point is toward the body, and the root chakra broadcasts out like that. So the root chakra represents your fears, finances, spinal column, nervous system, ego, confidence. It also represents the fight-flight mechanism of your subconscious mind. The root chakra is where you have a gut reaction to whatever goes on, and that's what sets the adrenals in motion. So when the fight-flight mechanism means that when you are confronted with some kind of event, you either are going to fight it, you're going to run from it, or you can freeze. You actually go into paralysis. Depending on the individual and how they've been conditioned and developed, they will do one of those three things. But it's important to take care of the root chakra, because the root chakra also is the beginning of the vertical power current, the system that drives the energy up and down the chakras. So the root chakra, of course, is the chakra that controls the spinal column and the nervous system. And it drives the vertical power current up. And of course, that vertical power current is going to explode out at 90-degree angles at all the chakras that have fronts and backs. The second, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth. Of course, the crown is singular, or the reflection of the root. So it's important to understand that with each one of the chakras, that if you have a physical injury, that's going to create a problem in the chakra. Because it sits right near the tailbone or the pubic bone, if you fall on your tailbone, you all know how much that hurts. But any kind of spinal injury is going to somewhat throttle the root chakra and shut it down. So when people continually have back problems, that is going to create an issue in the central nervous system, which affects the root chakra. So it's important to take care of your spine. Now, for those of you that attend meditation with me, you know that I'm a little bit of a stickler about what?
Posture.
Posture, thank you. Because when your spine is straight, the vertical power current is open and flowing. It's not bowed, all right? And so you're going to get much more of a pump coming from the root chakra, going to the crown, and then it opens and accelerates all the chakras so much more. When we talk about all these beautiful devices, whether we're talking about the meridians of the front and back, or the vertical power current, or the energy not moving, you have to think of these devices of having like little straws, like drinking straws. And if we bend or crimp a meridian, then that's like trying to drink a very thick milkshake, through a bent straw. It's very difficult. The energy does not flow. So the more we keep ourselves open and active, the energy flows more. So the root chakra is, it is the root of our psyche. And this is also where the survivalist in all of us is, that when we are confronted with circumstances and we don't have time to think, that we need to react. When the root chakra is open, we'll instinctively know what to do. And when I talk about finance in the root chakra, that's our need for our ability to create so that we can survive. Abundance and manifestation are in the second chakra, but the root chakra is where you're down to your last dime, and it's like, okay, I got to make something happen. That's where that comes from, because that's just do whatever it takes. Okay, so again, your root chakra is your survival instincts. Any questions about the root chakra? When I work on people, and I'll put the pendulum into the root chakra, which again, that would be like mid-thigh. You can see there's just no movement. And the same question comes out every time. Are you tired? Oh yeah. Or the adrenals are shot at that point. So we have to get the root chakra to open up. Now, this is really important too, because the chakras, especially from the root to the crown, are electromagnetic devices. When the root chakra is shut down for an extended period of time, now you want to think of your chakras as circuit breakers going on overload. And it will go from one to the next, all the way to the crown. But the root chakra, being the adrenals, actually will jump some of the others and go straight to the throat chakra, which is the thyroid, and that's your metabolism. So 90% of the time, show me a root chakra that's extremely blocked and the adrenals are really down, the throat chakra is going to be down too, because the thyroid is being taxed. And once the thyroid is taxed, then the thymus is going to get taxed, because that's your immune system. So it's amazing how they all play off of each other. And in time, when chakras are blocked, eventually the other chakras begin to overcompensate, and they use too much energy, and then they're going to get blocked too. And there are times that I have worked on people and all the chakras are down. Now, there's one thing to remember, is though, if the energy system is that taxed and all the chakras are down, it's a really good idea to check the aura for a tear. Because once the chakras are all going counterclockwise, that means energy is just being sucked out of them. And usually the aura has taken on quite a bit of damage. So if the aura is damaged, fix the aura first, then work on the chakras. Okay? All right. Are there any questions about the root chakra?
We mentioned that if there's a spinal injury, then that can cause negative effects to the root chakra, for example. And I've heard both ends of this, and I was hoping for some clarification. Does a blocked chakra lead to injuries, or does an injury lead to a blocked chakra, or both?
That's a great question. It doesn't matter which came first, the chicken or the egg. If you think of it as spiritual, physical, mental, and emotional, once there is damage to one of those areas, and it's severe enough, it's going to trigger reaction in the other three, okay? It can start as physical and then lead to more of chakra damage, which is spiritual, but there can also be extreme spiritual damage, let's call it psychic attack, and that can cause the chakra to shut down and erode that area of the physical body, okay? Sure, but remember something that's really important, that again, the chakras are connected to the physical body via the endocrine system. So if the chakras are electromagnetically shut down, they're going to slow down the working ability of that particular gland, and then there's going to be a hormonal imbalance. And whatever that hormone does, whether it puts out, whatever it puts, or it could put too much out. Like your thyroid can be hypothyroid, you can be hyperthyroid, okay? And by the way, there is such a thing when we get into pendulum work as the chakra being too open, okay? When you put the pendulum above the chakra, it should be about a 6-inch diameter. But when the chakra is going right around like an amusement park ride, which usually happens over the third chakra, that's hyperactive. We actually have to slow it down a little bit. Okay? Go ahead.
Is the root chakra connected to sexuality? Is that why
No.
I heard that?
No. That's gonna be next.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll talk about the second chakra. The second chakra, known as the sacral chakra, is the most complex chakra that we have. The bulk of our psyche is in the second chakra because it's the most sensitive, as it represents our emotions, and thus it gets blocked more than any other chakra because it is the one in our lifetime that is over prioritized. So here's the first thing that we have to understand about us as beings, and this is to remember not just for all of us in the room, but when we work on our clients too. And this is how complex we are. So the two highest forms of energy that we as humans have are spiritual and sexual. But the complication is that they both reside in the same pipeline, which is the second chakra. And in modern times, we have a tendency to really get this all confused, and we have to be very astute, mature, and sophisticated and aware so that when it comes to the appropriate circumstance, we have to know which one of those energies from the second chakra that we are supposed to use. Now, ultimately, when you're in a great romantic relationship, you can have spiritual and sexual together, and that's the way it's supposed to be, all right? But most of the time in the world, it's one or the other. Now, when we understand the sexual part, first of all, the body parts that go with the second chakra, of course, are the reproductive organs, the sexual organs. And so the second chakra represents all kinds of intimacy, meaning physical, mental, emotional. Trust issues are part of the second chakra. Security issues are part of it. The second chakra, because it is the chakra of procreation, represents abundance and manifestation. So that it does include money and all material and possessions. And then the second chakra also represents our self-worth, our self-esteem, and our pride. So what undermines the second chakra? Guilt, shame, and remorse. So the bulk of our psyche is in the second chakra, but we have to be able to figure that out. Now, when we get into the spiritual part colliding with the sexual part, we go back centuries ago and we think about different cloistered religions, and the word oath of celibacy comes out. And that is not a choice, okay? That's mandated in certain religious practices. So there is an aspect to the second chakra that's called the orgasmic bath. It's the natural occurrence of the flow of energy of the second chakra. So if you think of your chakras as volcanoes or geysers, they give off energy, they flow. The chakras are not meant to be repressed or suppressed. In our emotions and what we go through, we do quite a number on ourselves with our own second chakra because of our experiences and our self-esteem or lack of. So when we talk about the ego in the root chakra, that's how you feel about yourself. Your self-esteem is how you feel about you as directed or reflected from other people. So you could be going on a job interview and your ego and your confidence are very high. And then someone comes along and says, well, why are you wearing to that job interview? And all of a sudden you deflate like a cake in the oven. That's your self-esteem being lowered. So we're affected by other people through the self-esteem. The ego, we take care of ourselves. So when guilt, shame, and remorse come into play in the second chakra, and certain religions pride themselves on guilt, that's going to throttle the flow of the sexual part of the second chakra. It is masked by a pseudo-spiritual part of the second chakra because it's forced upon, and the person acts, like as an actor, acts that out. Do you understand? So as we get into gotten into the 20th century, we start to see more occurrences of things coming out of religion that were inappropriate, all right, because of repressed sexuality. The second chakra is not meant to be shut down. Look, it's one thing when people go through their own time of being in a relationship, not being in a relationship, and so the second chakra is utilized as a person wishes to. But when it's mandated, no, you can't, that energy wants to go somewhere, and people have thoughts and feelings. And when it goes somewhere, like a volcano that blows out the side, well, that becomes perversion. And that's where things get really tricky. It creates frustration, can cause anger, and cause a lot of different kinds of reactions. So the second chakra is the chakra that gets blocked more than any other chakra. You know, and any facilitator would tell you that. Now, the second chakra is the first in a series of fronts and backs. In fact, you have a diagram that you can see in your handout where we get to the second chakra. The second chakra is also where you have the most artistic and creative output. So the more open the second chakra is, the more creative or the more your right brain is going to work. Now, chakras over time, due to overwork, circumstances, and stress, will disconnect from each other. Down the road, you'll study how chakras have connecting wires to them. But when the third eye chakra disconnects from the second chakra, that's where you get a classic case of writer's block, because it's not getting any ideas in there. It's just functioning off itself. And the second chakra is orange by design, and that's the main color in it. And it rules, in a woman it rules the ovaries, in a man it rules the testes. Also rules kidneys and bladder too, part of the elimination system. Any questions about the second chakra? The second chakra, being the most delicate one, is the one where we're going to have cords the majority of the time. But when you're working on the second chakra, which is the one that has the most traumas, this is the one that where we have to be the most gentle. When you're working on the second chakra and you find extreme blockages, you want to clear it as much as you can, but it's really important that you don't go in there as a facilitator thinking you're going to clear it all in one session, as if you're drilling for oil, because all you're going to do is re-traumatize the person and possibly make things worse than what they were. So gentle on the second chakra. It's better to get it moving some instead of trying to clear it all at once. And anything in life, physical abuse, inappropriate sexual behavior, molestation, that's all part of the second chakra. And the other thing about the second chakra, trauma. Trauma is an individualized thing, and it's related to that person. Everybody has a different definition of trauma and what abuse is. And we don't ever downplay someone's personal experience. A lot of times when it comes to the second chakra, if you do find abuse in there or anything that's inappropriate sexual behavior, it's because of the guilt mechanism has kicked in, and the person has suppressed or is blaming themselves for what happened when they were younger, or something that happened to them where they were taken advantage of. That happens way more often than not, where it has not been talked about or brought out. So again, we have to be extremely delicate when we're working with this. Because of the way we live in the world today, and we're so enslaved to the lifestyle that we want to create, and we are bombarded with all kinds of fashion and sexual innuendo in everything that we see and do, the second chakra gets exposed to that kind of input and stimuli too early in life. And in a couple weeks, in a couple lessons, we will talk about the etheric stages of growth and what is supposed to happen at those age ranges. When the second chakra gets stimulated too early, it creates a heightened awareness that's not supposed to be there. But it's a part of today's modern society and what goes on. And we have to temper that and get that back into balance. Questions about the second chakra? Being recorded. People a lot of times feel that they're better off, or they're not in the circumstance that they really are. People don't deal with reality of their second chakra most of the time. And they have a tendency to mask, their true feelings about things with that. I'll give you a great story about how this works. So some years ago, this woman comes for a session. She was referred by a good client, and I'm looking at her second chakra, and it was above her body. You know how when you pull a plant out of the ground, you see the roots hanging there like that out of the dirt? That's what her second chakra looked like. And I asked her, did you have a relationship that broke up all of a sudden? Did you lose someone rapidly? And sure, a guy that she had dated for a long time was killed in a car accident. And there are other things I asked her in the process, and she confirmed all that. So as I'm working on her, what I did is I wove the second chakra back in so that it would work right. And so when I spoke with her a couple weeks later about a session, and a lot of people do call me and discuss their sessions with me, she was furious with me. And she says, I felt abused. And she said that other healers had worked on her, and she said she worked on that. That was all fine. But if it was fine, then why was the chakra hanging above her body looking like a plant that had been pulled out of the ground? So what happened was she thought she worked on it. She glossed over it to come to terms with it, but all the psychological damage was there. And all I did was put it back. And so what I did was I caused her to feel, and she didn't want to feel. And all I could say to her was, I'm sorry you didn't like your session. What was I supposed to say? I'm not going to argue with her. She's already mad. But sometimes people think they're in a place with themselves that they're not. And this happened to be in the second chakra, which is the most delicate one. And by rights, I didn't cut a cord, I didn't do anything wrong. I simply reattached the chakra. But people do things to convince themselves that, they make things okay. And the evidence was there that it wasn't okay. So I don't know whatever happened with that. I have no idea. I never heard anything negative from the person that referred her. So we just have to do the best we can and do what we know according to the rules, what's right. But we're not responsible for the reaction that people have on the table. We're just not. They come in, they want to have the work, you do the best you can, you follow the guidelines, and if there's something going on with them, that's them. This work is very unique and very eclectic. It's not for everyone. Sometimes people refer people, you got to go try it, which is nice, but it doesn't mean it's for everyone. Sometimes people say they didn't get much from it, but that's just their experience in it. And a lot of times, when you're, feeling the aura and you're putting the pendulum into the chakras, that's the diagnostics. You know, that's when you're finding out everything about them. And by the way, when it comes to the diagnostics, we're not trying to prove to clients how psychic we are. We're not trying to prove that. It's not an ego thing. Although there are clients that just try to like dare you to find out what's going on with them. And then as we get into the conditions that the aura, the chakras in the aura present, it's not our intention to point out what's wrong with someone. It's simply the intention to evaluate the circumstances as they are so that we can make corrections where corrections need made. That's really what it is. But you'll find that when you're talking to someone, you'll say, oh, you know, that chakra, that's good. And then when it comes into the chakra that's blocked, we do point out why it's blocked. And that's the key. Because it's not enough to just say, well, it's blocked. You know, you'll see over the next couple of weeks what each one of those chakras represents. Well, the second chakra represents this roster of things that's like this. There's so much that goes into it. And it could be a number of things. But the second chakra is something. Do you want to record this, what I'm about to say? What?
I have been.
Oh, okay. So the second chakra, because it's so complex, doesn't have the ability to segment, you know, individual components of our life. And sometimes people do and say things that are sort of disavowing the human condition. So while the second chakra has a lot to do with creating abundance, you know, and of course it is romance that's in there. It's a heart, it's not phallic. Okay? And sometimes people talk about life as, you know, I'm great without a relationship. You know, I'm married to my job, everything is fine. But the whole chakra and all components of the chakra need to be nurtured. And so over time, if some of those components like creativity and relationship or intimacy are not acted out, the chakra begins to erode a little bit, because everything that's coming in there is all about possessions and money, attainment and abundance. So a chakra can't, when I say the chakra can't segment its components, what that means is if it's not being nurtured with all the things that are part of it, it's going to start to block. And even though this person makes $750,000 a year, eventually that's going to shut down, and eventually the choices that a person makes come into play. So years ago, this woman who is, you know, a mature woman, she had a great job and wasn't in a relationship. Now she consciously was bemoaning no relationship. So what happened was all her focus and attention shifted into what she didn't have, which triggered the chakra to go from being open into counterclockwise, meaning she became, the second chakra became electromagnetically repulsive. And she was in a few weeks later and she lost her job, because instead of just continuing where she was, she shifted her whole posture into negativity and put all her energy into what she didn't have instead of what she had. So people and their choices, people always have choices, but people make choices at times that are counterproductive instead of allowing things to play out. You know, the second chakra is also the playful part of us too. Now we know it's physical intimacy, of course, but it's supposed to have the spiritual component, so when we're in an incredible relationship, it all blends together, all right? Like the DNA helix. So when things are working, it's incredible. When components are missing, things go the other way. So we have to be careful with the second chakra.
Questions. So I have two questions. One, if you're repairing it, like you talked about the lady that you repaired, how long does it stay repaired for? Is it something that like she could consciously like be like, I want to disconnect that again, I don't want to feel, so it just rips out again? Or is it like a more of a permanent fix? Or
Nothing's permanent, okay? People's actions, thoughts and actions affect that.
But if she went on a more positive route and focused on that, then it would stay, because you fixed it, then it would stay healed for the most part?
People need time to get used to the way the energy feels, and once they get that momentum going and they really make the correction, remember, what's in your chakras are your thoughts. So you change your thoughts, you're going to change your life.
Okay.
So when you're doing what's called beaming and drawing, where you have your quartz generator and you're in there moving the energy and you're basically cleaning that out, that's an opportunity for them to leave here with a fresh start. But we all know that there are dogs that we wash and they'll go run off and go and roll in the dirt, all right? Well, humans do roll in the dirt. And sometimes they go back into their old behavior. So, again, we can't take away the power of choice and free will from anyone. People are going to do what they're going to do. And sometimes it can take 2, 3, 4 sessions over time to get that where you need it to be. I mean, especially, you know, I remember, this is a second chakra issue too. There was another female client who was 40-ish, and she comes in and she actually has a pretty good job. And she sits and she says she really doesn't like the job. Her boss is a jerk. She doesn't like her coworkers. The commute's too long. It's really not worth what she's paid. I mean, she went down the roster of what was wrong with it. She's back in 6 weeks later in tears. I lost my job. And I literally said to her, and I'm surprised why? What do you mean? You told the universe you didn't want your job. Well, I needed it. I said, the universe saw you in pain. You didn't want your job, so the universe relieved your pain.
Yeah.
Thoughts, actions. See, the chakras are the very mystical part of the energetic body, but in that mystical part is everything that we do. You know, in your aura and your chakras are the evidence of everything that goes on. And a person can come in and try to tell me that they didn't do this or they didn't do that, and it's like, yeah, you really want to tell me you're not doing that? It's all on record. So your auric body is part of your in this work we call it the Deca-Delta codes, which is also the Akashic records. Everything you've ever thought or done is on record. Oh, that's a scary thought, isn't it? No, actually it's beautiful. And that's good, because then for the work that we do, if there's something that we need to go in and recapture and look at, we can. Because maybe a person needs to know that something happened way back in their life and they are a certain way. And we go, oh yeah, I can see this, and this. And you can go in and clean that. So, you know, we can help take away the pain, but they have to want to take away their pain. And sometimes clients come in, and this is where you have to be careful. To say, I'm ready, go for it, clean out what you have to do, tell me everything, I can handle it. And I'm thinking to myself, no, you can't.
You can't handle the truth.
No. And you'd be, you know, open with them to a point, but you don't tell them everything or do everything. They'd be melted jello on the floor if you did that. And also the good thing is, and this is why you take the accelerated meditation class and become very familiar, you're, you know, in those sessions, you're like the head surgeon, and you have all your spirit guides in there assisting with the process. And so when you do want to say something like a second chakra issue, like when you were 10 years old, your grandfather did this, you know, the guides will go, no, don't say that. Do not. They'll tell you at times, don't say that. It's not time. And you have to listen. As much as you want your client to listen to you, you have to listen to your guides also. As it makes a difference. Because they can keep you out of trouble. But if your ego comes into play, oh yeah, I'm going to really go after this one. Oh, that's not going to be a good experience for anyone. So, you know, one step at a time.
Stuff that this chakra does, and you know, you talk about sex, you talk about manifestation. Is there a way to, like, say you're really working on manifesting something in your life, but if you're having a lot of sex, does it like drain you of your energy of like being able to manifest? Does that make sense?
No, not
what
at
I'm
all.
asking?
Not at all, because see, the orgasmic bath is an important part of the second chakra, and it's sort of a steam valve. It doesn't drain you, okay? It's not like Mick and Rocky telling them, women weaken legs. It's not that. You know, it's...
Because I've heard too, in like certain Wicca religions and stuff like that, they talk about, you know, an orgasm actually being able to create and help manifest. So I wasn't
Yes,
sure
and there-
if you
and
could,
there
like,
is sex
overuse
magic.
that
It-
energy. You know what I mean? Like, not. I mean, I don't know. It was just a thought.
Well,
It's
no,
like,
it's-
I wonder if that's.
I've actually had my clients use that, you know, I'll give them some homework, let's just say, and I'll tell them when they're actually in that moment, really have your intention and put it out to the universe.
Totally.
That is some powerful energy to
Yeah.
create on.
That's what I thought too.
Yes.
I just wasn't sure if. Okay.
Oh,
Well,
yeah.
remember,
That was one of my questions.
you have to remember the way you're asking that. The two highest forms of energy that we have are sexual and spiritual. They're both in the second chakra. So when you set intention, all right, that thing is powerful. You know, that's Mount Vesuvius.
Right.
Audrey, of course you. It's Old Faithful.
Oh man.
Old
Nicholas,
Faithful.
and we're still taping.
You're gonna edit that. Oh my God. You will edit that
I
out.
think you guys need a blooper section on YouTube now.
Yeah, I know. So does that help?
Okay. Yeah, absolutely.
Everything is sex magic.
Right.
That's part of it.
Right.
So, but